naughty, terrible, don't listen to it list. And as will become a theme in this episode, the list, of course, inadvertently boosted the sales of all of those on it due to the forbidden fruit effect.
Every single time.
Yep.
Every time.
Every time. It's what happens. They're sacrificing cats after school in their bedrooms.
You are listening to Tape Spaghetti, a podcast about the twisted and tangled innards of the music industry. Some of this content may not be for all listeners or viewers, so if it's not for you, no harm, no foul. We'll just catch you on the next one. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go.
Welcome back to Tape Spaghetti. I am Scott Marquardt, and I am joined, as always, by my dear friend, the lovely, the wonderful Blake Weiland. How you doing, Blake?
I like it when you do intros because it makes me feel better about myself.
I like it when you do outros.
Okay.
Because it's just one less thing I have to worry about.
We can do that. That's fine. That's fine. I'm all warmed up by the end of the episode. I can spout off all kinds of nonsense.
Who is that on your t-shirt?
Oh, look closely. That is Mr.
Oh,
Tommy
is that Tommy Wiseau?
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, it's kind of low, but you're tearing me apart, Lisa.
Now it's quite clear. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I wore this to a Bouncing Souls concert, and the amount of people that were staring at it, trying to figure out what it was very fun. Because they're like, is this a band I don't know? Like, what's going on here? And, one guy asked me something. He's like, so is that like a Steven reference or something? I don't remember what he said, but it had nothing to do with the room. And I was like, not exactly.
What an amazing man, Tommy Wiseau. Like, I feel like we're all like wondering, like, if I just do one good thing in my life, will that be enough? And Tommy is evidence that you can just do one bad thing in your life, and that can also be enough.
That can be enough for hundreds and hundreds of people to come to see you and your bad movie in Portland, Oregon. So, yes, that was marvelous.
Oh, my word.
Well, we were lined up outside of the theater. I should explain. I'm wearing this shirt because of the room. And if you don't know what the room is, this is not the place you're going to learn about it. Go Google Tommy Wiseau, the room, and that'll be where you want to start there.
You should know as little as possible and just watch it.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
That's the best way to do it.
Definitely. But Tommy, he was there for this presentation, and there was a lady and it was like a family. Like, it was a big gaggle of people, actually. Now that I think about it, I forgot. This happened multiple times. People would walk by the theater and they would look and they would see him in there, like getting ready. And they weren't letting anyone in the theater yet. And people who were walking by had no idea what was going on. And this one family stopped. They're like, is that Tommy Wiseau in there? And they're like, what is going on? Why is he here? Their minds were blown. Like, just
they were there
out.
for another movie. I was assuming they were there for the room. Like, that was the only thing going on.
No, they weren't even going to the theater. They were just walking by and they saw him through the glass, he was like through two glass doors and like probably 60 yards away from them. And they were still recognized him. And we're like, what's he doing here? What's going on? They're like, it's him. And they're freaking out. And like, this one group in particular was really entertaining because they did not have that on their bingo card for the evening.
No, what an unexpected thing to run into.
Yeah. So it was fun. We had a great time. It started so late because everyone wanted to get their picture with Tommy, present party included. So yeah, it was a good time. Recommend.
Heck yeah. Okay. I will keep an eye in case he comes to Nashville.
I bet he would. Seems like a town that would appreciate a performance.
I was back in Indianapolis this weekend with my parents. I took them down to see the Indiana Pacers play Game 6 against the New York Knicks. And we won, which was amazing. Tickets were not cheap, but my parents were older and we always love basketball. We're from Indiana. It's like what we have. So it was cool to be able to take them. By the time anyone's listening to this, the Pacers will have either shocked everybody and won the NBA Finals or been tragically embarrassed in the NBA Finals by the Oklahoma City Thunder. Game 1 is tonight as we're taping this. So I don't know yet, but you, dear listener, already know. So I'm not going to make any predictions because I'll sound silly.
But hey, this is a little peek behind the curtain. This one's several weeks out. And by that time, maybe you'll be smiling by the next time I see you, and just I'm hoping for it.
I could be. I got other stuff in my mind right now because Blake and listener, I shall confide in you. I'm a little vain, and by kind of sheer weird chance, I'm shooting like a national TV commercial. Well, actually 3 of them next week for a large company that one day you'll see who it is. It's related to Stringjoy, my guitar string company, our guitar string company. But anyway, I'm like, this all happened kind of suddenly, and now I've got to like be on camera in a way that will be seen by everyone that's ever known me or ever will know me. And so I'm trying to do my best to slim down as quickly as I can before this, which is not a lot of time. So I'm not eating a whole lot, and I've been walking a whole lot. And operating on limited energy.
Well, that's always a lot of fun. There's nothing like cutting weight before a big fight, you know?
That's exactly what's basically going on. I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but you know, I want to look like the best version of myself that I could muster in 7 days.
I want to look as absolutely emaciated as possible. Yeah.
yes, that as well.
I took up the 90s supermodel diet of cigarettes, and now I shall slim down.
That was my 20s. Yeah, it worked great back then.
It'll work for a while until it doesn't.
It will. It will. I made it out with my skin intact somehow. But that's enough, dear listener of Scott's vanity. But just know that it exists. I'm a little ashamed by it, but not too ashamed to admit it.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. It's called honesty.
Yeah. As somebody that has to be in front of cameras a whole lot, you know, though normally this is the thing, Blake, what I love about doing this with you is it's like, just hear up. Nobody has any idea what's going on with the rest of me.
Well, that's true. And your face always does kind of look the same, no matter what. So
I've got that going for me.
You've got that going for me. Some people balloon up and down in the face. I'm a little bit that way. Like if I eat too much salt, you'll be like, Blake, can you see me?
Be looking like Jason Aldean.
Yeah, that's right. Just looking for an old salt lick, kind of keep my electrolyte levels up.
From your wife, but have remembered forever.
I've never been able to unsee it. Once she said he looks like he might like salt.
That's exactly what he looks like. Mm-hmm. I drove by his like merch bus, I guess, in Kentucky on the way back from Indiana. It was the Jason Aldean something or other tour, and I just saw that face staring right back at me. And one thing that I thought was kind of funny, it was sponsored by Patriot Mobile or Patriot Wireless.
What does that even mean?
I intuit it to be a right-wing leaning cell phone service provider.
Okay,
because why would you want to have a cell phone service that doesn't support your unique ideology?
Right. Especially when all of these like sub-branded cell phone service providers are just piggybacking off of the major networks.
The same thing. Yeah. And that's why this episode is sponsored by Woke Wireless.
That's right.
the only wireless service that bleeps out any curse words or anything untoward that you may say in the middle of your conversation.
No, that is just what Scott's being sponsored by. I'm sponsored by Shoot, Shoot, Bang, Bang wireless services. Yeah.
I would love a wireless service that censors me. That'd be great. It would save me from putting my foot in my mouth quite as often as I do. And speaking of censorship, Blake, what a lovely tie-in. Sometimes we have good tie-ins, sometimes we have bad.
That was a good segue. Yeah.
Is uniquely appropriate for today's topic of conversation, which I am so excited about. As long as we've been doing this podcast, I've known that I wanted to talk about this. Because it's a very cool story that touches on music and touches on politics and morality and all that. We are talking about the PMRC, Tipper Gore's organization in the 1980s that pushed to create that awesome little explicit content label that we both grew up with being on CDs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might just be the thumbnail for this episode. Parental Advisory, explicit content.
Oh, holy, yeah, that has to be.
Yeah.
How could it be anything else?
We'll talk to Eli about that. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll work on that. On that. Our producer, Eli, will be more than happy to whip that right up.
Yes. Well, I'm excited. Yeah, because I just want to kind of give like my reference. That was very much, and I think we both grew up. For those that don't remember, I'm sure most of the people listening to this do, but for the younger generation, we would go to the store to physically buy our media, and when we were kids, whether we were allowed to purchase that or not was kind of based upon the rating system, and there wasn't really one for music. And so they started slapping these parental advisory logos on the covers of all of these different releases. And that was like, some stores would sell you them, some stores wouldn't. And regardless, those are the ones that you want. So I don't really know how all this rolled out. I just know that it did, and it was weird and dumb and had the opposite effect. But let's get into the roots of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. That's exactly right. All right. So let's start by going a little bit back in time. Well, we're going to stay back in time to the 1980s. So Jimmy Carter's out, Ronald Reagan is in, and conservatism and family values are the order of the day. In general, we see kind of this shift rightward from most of the population. And it's often, kind of in hindsight, seen as something of a clapback or a response to the 1960s and 1970s, in which people saw a decline in religiosity, morality, individual responsibility, and family authority from the 1960s to the 1970s. And in general, it was kind of meant as a response to fix this decaying American republic that people felt. This is not my words, but this is what people were seeing at the time. Mm-hmm. Remember, Ronald Reagan was the one that came up with "Make America Great Again."
Yes.
That was then
100%.
kind of, grabbed and redone. And I think it's kind of interesting because this sounds a little bit familiar to where we are right now, right? And of course, the current, version of "Making America Great Again" is going back to the 1980s in a lot of people's minds, which is funny because that was the period in which they were like, this is terrible. We have to go back to the 1950s.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a romanticism for times that like not everybody experienced, mm-hmm. Like we didn't really know what it was like, even though we were born around that time. We grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s. So things were very different. So we look at the 80s and we're like, Rambo and giant sunglasses and pro wrestling? Yeah, buddy, that sounds mm-hmm. great. Let's go back to the 80s. But in reality, we're talking about, don't quote me on this exact number. You want to buy a house? Cool. That'll be 12% interest.
Yes, exactly. We were dealing with stagflation. We had up to 19% interest at one point. Mm-hmm. So, first I want to talk a little bit about the concept of a moral panic, which this is often cited as one of like the examples of moral panic. So Stanley Cohen was who came up with the concept of moral panic in 1972. It is, quote, the process of arousing social concern over an issue driven by, quote, moral entrepreneurs, this term that he kind of coined and amplified by mass media and politicians. Yeah, I like it as well.
What does that mean exactly? What in his world?
I think it'll kind of come out as I keep going. So he identified kind of 5 stages of moral panics and 4 key agents. So he felt that to create a real moral panic, you needed some level of mass media, which probably could even be a printing press, but television certainly doesn't hurt. Quote, moral entrepreneurs, which I think to him are kind of these instigating people, the people that see something that they want to change, that they don't see all of society working as hard as they want it to change. You need a culture of social control. And of course, you need the general public. So he felt that mass media, kind of produced these processed or coded images of deviance, often with exaggeration, distortion, and symbolization, basically kind of taking these, specific examples of whatever it is that you are going to say is taking over the world and really, really coding it and really making it look absolutely absurd. So this is often seen as like one of the great moral panics, where you take something that a few people see and are like, oh my gosh, this is a big problem. And then those people raise a bunch of awareness around it. Mass media jumps on it. And suddenly you got yourself, satanic panic in the attic. Everybody's worried about the children are being taken over by Satanists.
The Dungeons and Dragons did it to them.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's always a little part of it. So the PMRC, which we'll get into how that kind of formed, their kind of central goal was to raise awareness about music's, quote, ostensible catastrophic effect on adolescence. They viewed what they called, and I love this, porn rock and heavy metal as contributing to society's ills.
There's a few bands that I could put in that category, though, even though that's kind of a weird term. I can think of a few that probably actually belong there. Not advocating for censorship, but I think they'd be proud to be labeled as porn rock.
There are, and especially these days, and back then there were maybe a few, but I think that's something that will be a theme in this is that some of the stuff that they found to be so egregious at the time seems comparatively a little silly now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. The amount of, just for an example, the amount of soccer moms that I see rolling around, windows down, blasting NWA. Now, it's common. And I'm like, yeah, go get it. I love NWA. But at the time, shocking and horrifying. And I actually understand it, too. I get why.
Yeah, absolutely. So the PMRC itself. The PMRC was founded by 4 quote unquote Washington wives, is what they were known as in 1985. These were women that were all in Washington together. Their husbands were all politicians. And so they had a lot of connections. They had, maybe a fair bit of free time. Their husbands were generally the ones that were involved in politics. So these women had access to power and a decent bit of time on their hands. And interestingly, it was it was not all one party or the other. Tipper Gore is seen as the leader of this. She's Al Gore's wife. Of course, Al Gore is a Democrat. But she wasn't the only one. She kind of whipped it all together. But you had Susan Baker, who was the wife of Treasury Secretary James Baker. You had Pam Hauer, wife of Washington Realtor Raymond Hauer, and Sally Nevius, wife of former Washington City Council Chairman John Nevius. These kind of core 4 women, they were later joined by a bunch of others, but they kind of united to create this organization. They got some financial aid from Mike Love of the Beach Boys, which is a whole different episode.
Really?
But Mike Love is kind of not beloved by all followers of the Beach Boys.
I did not realize that he had anything to do with it. Wow.
Yeah.
And not
Neither
Mike
did I
Love,
until I
our
was
artist.
researching.
Yeah, not our Mike Love.
Not that Mike Love. The Mike Love that was the chief lyricist of the Beach Boys, who was the one that in all of the Beach Boys stories, felt that Pet Sounds was a horrible mistake and they needed to get back to making more songs about cars and girls. Mike Love, also interestingly, for the basketball fans out there, is the uncle of NBA star Kevin Love.
Okay. All right.
Who's 6'11".
Jeez.
Okay. I know, kind of wild. They also got some money from Joseph
closet.
Coors, from the Coors Beers family, who also provided some office space. So these women were motivated, kind of, all in their own different ways, by these interactions they had with the music that children or their children or the young people of the time were listening to. So for Tipper Gore, it was specifically Prince's Darling Nikki. Do you know Darling Nikki?
No.
Oh, it's a great
Why
song.
don't I know that song?
Yeah. It is a somewhat, lewd song. It's from Purple Rain. It's great. It's one of my favorites. She found her 11-year-old daughter, Karina, listening to this song in 1984. And any mother of an 11-year-old, like, what are you listening to? We're like, oh, egads.
I kind of get it. I'd be like, oh, right. We're going to need to revisit this at a later date.
It happens. And I should just note, I am not a parent and Blake is a parent. So you'll have maybe some better relation to these experiences than I might.
I guess just kind of going why I even say that, because I'm generally not in favor of censorship across the board. That's my general take on it. But you are responsible as an adult for the stuff that your kids consume. And kids are always going to find a way around it and consume things you don't want them to. That's the nature of it. But at the same time, you can't be like, that stuff exists in this world that they're not ready for, or maybe, they need to be a little more mature before they experience it or whatever. And that maybe falls into this category, but it's my fault. It got through my door,
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, discipline the kid. Like, no, you can't listen to that. That's not for you right now. But still, hey, it got in under my watch. It's my responsibility. It's not Prince's responsibility to not make that music. He can do whatever he wants.
Right. It's up to me ultimately. Susan Baker, one of the other women that were chiefly involved in this, her experience was she found her 7-year-old daughter listening to Like a Virgin, the big Madonna hit that was everywhere at the time. I mean, everywhere, impossible to avoid. And she asked her, what's a virgin? And, in Susan's defense, I think with Tipper or having to have that conversation with an 11-year-old, well, you're probably not very far off from needing to have them discovering these things on their own. A 7-year-old, I can understand. You're like, oh boy, there's a lot of context necessary to, I think a lot of parents probably just like lie.
Yeah.
Like it's a type of olive oil. I don't know.
The standard line for me right now is like, you know what? That's something we need to talk about, but not right now.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it when you're older. Mm-hmm.
That seems fair. That's a good line. I'm going to have to remember that if it ever comes up for me. So, these women and the others that were involved with them, they perceived this deviance and profanity that was entering their home. And a lot of these little bits are quotes that I have from different sources. And they felt responsible as mothers and as they saw themselves, moral educators to police the media in many ways. They felt, now interestingly, like one of those songs is a pop song. Well, kind of both of them are pop songs. Like Prince, I think, was seen more as rock at the time, but now comparatively definitely feels a way more pop than rock. Mm-hmm. Insofar as there's a delineation. Madonna certainly pop. But they did really zero in on rock music specifically, and specifically heavy metal, which we'll kind of get into, even though that's not in their like sort of origin cases for why they were so upset about all this stuff.
Maybe it's because they, the more they dug into it, the more intense they found, or the more intensive things they found, which at the time would have largely been regulated to heavy metal, punk, and then emerging from hip hop. That was kind of getting started in the mainstream at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Mm. And it's interesting because I think that there are kind of two parallel aims of this. Like the stated aims that the PMRC had were to allow parents to make informed choices about the music that's coming into their home. And that you can kind of understand, like their point is like, how are parents supposed to know if this album has this very objectionable material just based on the song titles or the album title? So we want to create some way for parents that to know what's in there before they purchase it. But a central theme of this to me is that it really bleeds towards them kind of wanting to police it in the culture writ large, in my opinion.
Kind of taking a whole, not even genre, I was going to say, but like anything that they label with this label and effectively putting it behind the curtain at the video rental store.
Exactly.
How's that for a timely reference?
Oh, no, I mean, it's very literally that. That's we'll get into it, but that's one of the specific recommendations they had.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Tipper Gore, like they kind of took a step forward as they formed this group and started to talk about this stuff and made it kind of their, raison d'etre. She linked these explicit lyrics directly to teen pregnancies that were on the rise at the time. Rape statistics were up 7%. Youth suicide rates were up 300% over 3 decades, while adult suicides remained stable. Their sense was that this music, these bad influences, were leading them to more sex, drug use, more illicit behavior, things like this, violence, criminality, and even suicide in a lot of ways.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff to put on one boogeyman.
Yeah. Well, and this happens a lot. Usually there's always a simple solution. Everything is all because of one problem. Yeah. And if we just fix this one thing, everything will be fine.
It'll all go away. This couldn't possibly be due to a, massive array of problems coming from a bunch of different angles and society having a whole bunch of unprecedented stuff going on. Oh no, this sounds familiar.
That's right. Exactly. It's not the society is like hedged this way. It's the music. It's just the music. If only it weren't for the music, this wouldn't be happening. And specifically within a lot of this, and it'll come up again and again, but heavy metal gets like its own unique sort of treatment here because they perceive that like a lot of this stuff, like rap music is lascivious and has like a lot of sexual overtones and things like that. But it's the heavy metal that is Satan's music.
Right.
There's, in some cases, explicit references to satanic things. And so that's what gives us a real satanic panic here is that side of it, that children are listening to this. They're worshiping Satan. Once you're worshiping Satan, everything's out the window at that point. Well, you're knocking over convenience stores.
There's a clip from, it looks like the mid 80s. It sounds, when you watch it, it sounds like a spoof, but you watch it and they're like, this is how to tell if your kid is worshiping Satan, and like goes into the room and like shows like, do they have a black candle? Do they have like all this stuff? And I'm like, I know that there are kids at that time who were, putting on airs largely and trying to be scary, because I went to school with some of them myself, and that was much, much later, obviously.
Yeah.
But the thought that in every town across America, all of the youths are out there trying to summon Satan. It's like,
all of them.
Really? Okay. And then it doesn't help that there were a bunch of phony baloney stories that came out that were proven false later that sound horrifying. If they're real, It sounds horrible. And then it comes out later. It's like, none of that was real, actually.
Yep. This is all tied to the same stuff. And this is your classic satanic panic thing. They're sacrificing cats after school in their bedrooms, and they're giving their souls and bodies up to Satan.
Yeah, I never once ran into that.
No, neither did I. I don't think I would have existed. For me, and I'm sure we'll touch on this later, but there was kind of an echo of this whole period in the late 90s. And that's what I grew up in. And that's when you had, the public enemy number one before we knew who Osama bin Laden was Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson was just ruining everything that's good and holy about our great country of America and replacing it all with the devil.
Yeah. And he was like, I am? Oh, yeah, I am. Let's lean into that.
Yeah. What a great way to get famous and make money. I had my church, my youth group, we did we had some speaker in that was like some, fire and brimstone motivational speaker dude. And, he was identifying all the music that you shouldn't listen to.
And you're like, yes,
and talking about why. Exactly. Marilyn Manson figured very heavily. ICP, Insane Clown Posse, figured very heavily, which I don't think I knew before that, because I was in sixth grade. And I remember him talking about, he talked about this ICP song. I don't even know which one it was, but it's still burned in my brain, where he was like, we went through the lyrics and he was like, they're talking about kidnapping I remember he was like a blue-eyed virgin. And I think that wasn't that obvious, but he was like, based on the coding and in satanic verses, this is what it actually means. And then they were going to sacrifice her to Satan and all this sort of thing. So I felt I really resonate with this period, because I felt like it was going on again.
I thought you were going to say he was trying to save you all from a crippling Faygo addiction.
I had a crippling Faygo addiction. I'm from the Midwest, dude. I drank so much Red Pop. You can't even imagine how much Red Pop I drank. To
ICP. I had no idea what that was. I was like, what's Faygo?
Before I knew that, I was upset that ICP commandeered it, because Faygo's delicious. It's just delicious fruit sodas. They were cheap. They were 29 cents a bottle at the grocery store. I would always get that when we'd rent a VHS, at the Kroger. I'd get some Faygo and we'd get a bruschetta pizza or something. And it was great.
Man, good times. But
Very good
ICP
times.
is corrupting it. So you're lucky you got out.
But the point is, they brought so much attention to this stuff. I would have never come across ICP in sixth grade. It would have taken me a while, and it's not good music to me. It's not my favorite thing at all. So it wouldn't, but it was so interesting. They told me about it. They told me why I shouldn't listen to it. Here's the specific songs you super want to avoid from this band. I'm like, no.
Yeah, sure. Definitely not going to listen to all of this tomorrow.
Yeah, immediately. So thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Anyway, so the PMRC, we've got the motivations of why they joined together.
I'm sorry, I'm just picturing you being like, okay, I don't want to listen to it. All right, I'm going to go check out this ICP. It's
bad.
You're right. I don't want to listen to this, but not for the reasons that you told me.
Yeah. Disturbed is kind of cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. It's just a weird, I guess, because some of the songs you're so excited about. All right, this is the one. Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, it's a letdown when they're not that good.
Yeah. I should have listened to the guy.
He was right. If he just told me they were lame, I wouldn't have listened to him.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
So the PMRC forms, and they come out with kind of a set of recommendations of what they want to do about all this. Their main goal is to increase parental control over children's access to music. So they propose a voluntary rating system, really similar to the film rating system, where there'll be some level of clarity for parents about what's inside. They specifically are talking about having printing warnings about lyrics on album covers, requiring record stores to place albums with explicit covers underneath the sales counters. as I was mentioning earlier, and pressuring TV stations. Of course, MTV is huge at the time, and that's a big piece of this. Music's really important. MTV's everywhere, and they want, MTV and them to also refrain from broadcasting explicit songs or videos. So they really propose, they drill in on all of this stuff, that they're talking about voluntary labeling. They're not talking about censorship at all. And there's no government action. We just want to, get truth in packaging is the term they use.
Okay.
So, and you're going to like this, they compiled a list of songs that they deemed the most offensive of the time. And they titled this list, or it was known as the Filthy 15.
Again, another list of things I must investigate. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Sounds great. Yeah.
So
yeah, the UK did something similar with films. They called them like the video nasties, and there was like 50 titles or something. Yeah.
Video nasties is both very UK and would not make me want to run out and listen to it. But the Filthy 15 sounds like a, now that's what I call music compilation that I could buy on CD, and I would like, give me this.
Yeah. No kidding.
This sounds great.
Oh, that's amazing.
On the Filthy 15, we've got Prince's Darling Nikki, of course, for its sex/masturbatory content. Sheena Easton's Sugar Walls, which I don't know that well, which is up there for sexual themes. Judas Priest's Eat Me Alive.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Sex, okay. Also a little bit of violence. We've got Vanity's Strap On Robbie Baby, which I don't know much about, but I'll just leave that there. Yep. We've got, of course, Motley Crue's Bastard for violence and language. You could have picked a variety of Motley Crue songs, but that's the one. I do picture these ladies all listening to to a Walkman, like fast forwarding and be like, which of these is the worst?
I think it's more like they just get lyric sheets, which makes it even weirder because you're not reading it or hearing it in context. And sometimes that changes the meaning of everything.
Completely.
In these cases, it doesn't actually a whole lot, but I'm just imagining, well, listen, Martha, this one says, and just like, oh no, I can't possibly.
So you've got AC/DC's, I don't know if you're going to guess it. I was almost going to play a guessing game, but it's Let Me Put My Love Into You.
Yeah, I could have put, I probably would have. That would have been on the list. Yeah.
It's on the list. Yeah. For sexual themes. Twisted Sister, the only band to appear twice on this list. We've got We're Not Gonna Take It, which is a violent song, according to the PMRC.
Really? Wait, hold on. They just don't like that because it's criticizing old people. That's why they don't like it. Like
100%.
That song is not inappropriate in any way. And it doesn't say anything about actively hurting anybody. It just says, we're not going to take it anymore.
Brother, all these people, it's totally worth noting, all the people involved in this are all boomers that themselves were there in the late 1960s listening to protest music at the same time. And that was all fine. But this is not fine. How dare they not take it?
Twisted Sisters were not going to take. I knew Twisted Sister was involved. I would not have guessed that was one of the songs on this list at all. I would let my kids listen to that right now.
Me too. It's a great song. So the second Twisted Sister one, and this one will come up later, so bookmark it in your brain, is Under the Blade, which they noted was sadomasochistic with themes of bondage and rape. We'll get into that one a little bit later. We've got Wasps, Animal, parentheses, like a beast.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
That seems fair. I'm okay with it. We've got Def Leppard's High and Dry Saturday Night, about drug and alcohol use, they say. Merciful Fate's Into the Coven.
Yep.
For occult-based stuff, fair enough. Black Sabbath's Trashed. This wouldn't have been, I don't know if that's probably not Ozzy Sabbath. Would it be?
I think that's got to be Dio.
I think that would be Dio Sabbath.
I can't remember in my brain, but that sounds, I'm pretty sure that's Dio.
Yeah, so drug and alcohol use there. Mary Jane Girls in My House. Mary Jane Girls are great, by the way. Some great Prince, related songs from all that stuff. But that's the one they chose, not just the whole band being about the weed girls. Anyway, we've got Venom's Possessed, and we've got for occult, and we've got Cyndi Lauper's She Bop rounding out the list. Okay, all right. I feel like now what year was this list produced? Do you know? So this is all basically 1985.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like,
Yeah.
I could think of a lot more songs.
I could think of a ton.
Yeah, that would
Also.
be, you could swap a lot of those out with something much more intense. But
Very much so. But they're looking at this is all. I haven't dated all of these, but they're all pretty recent to when it came out.
yeah, they are.
They're
That's why
not.
asked.
I don't think as much focused on back catalog as they are new stuff.
If you start slapping labels on Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, I'm gonna have a problem. Okay, leave that thing alone.
I agree. It's just too great of a cover. You don't want to mess that thing up.
Yeah, I don't want you to destroy what's there. Okay.
So they put this list out. This naughty, terrible, don't listen to it list. And as will become a theme in this episode, the list, of course, inadvertently boosted the sales of all of those on it due to the forbidden fruit effect.
Every single time.
Yep.
Every time.
Every time. It's what happens. What happens every single time. But they didn't stop there. Little public shaming, not bad. But they proceeded with trying to kind of formalize some of this stuff. Because again, these are well-connected women that are involved in all of this. And I'm putting it all on the women in some ways. Their husbands are involved. They're certainly at the very least like threading some needles and letting it happen, probably like really championing it in a lot of ways. It does tend to fall on the women that form the PMRC, but
they're the face of it
too.
There's of course men involved and men pushing things through. It's just they're the face of it, so we're probably going to refer to it as them most of the time.
Yeah. So this all comes to a head. This is like the real kind of apex of the PMRC moment with some Senate hearings, because again, these women are very well connected. So they're able to advance this whole thing all the way up to where the Senate is getting involved. This hearing is held on September 19th, 1985. Its official title is Record Labeling Hearing Before the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, United States Senate, 99th Congress, First Session, on Contents of Music and the Lyrics of Records. Objective: address horn rock and explicit content in sound recordings.
Okay. All right. Let's see what they do.
So as much as like up to this point, they'd been like, hey, very just voluntary labelings. We're not talking about censorship or nothing like that. The mere fact that there's a Senate hearing about it is definitely making it feel like government censorship for a lot of people and riling up a lot of people, really on both sides, but especially the opposition, to being like, whoa. It's one thing for you to like make a stink about this. There's always been people upset about, explicit content, but to like jump to where we're like thinking about the government getting involved and saying what can and cannot exist, or what within what parameters you're allowed to put something on a record. This gets a little spicy.
It does. Yeah. It's always that classic First Amendment thing, right? I do think that is one of the best things about the United States was baked in. Really, really
Big
important.
time.
And it is really important. And I think it's important for artists to be able to express themselves and say whatever they want to say. And if you don't want to hear it, you shouldn't be forced to hear it.
Yep.
But, and so that's where some regulation is needed, because my band definitely forced our neighbors to hear things they didn't want to hear at various times and got shut down. But this is a little different thing. I think it's very much starting to be like, no. You can say whatever you want to say, but only behind the curtain.
Yep.
It's like, that just gets really strange.
Yep. So, ahead of the hearing, Senator James Exon from Nebraska threatened restrictive legislation if the industry didn't comply. So you're kind of putting some teeth on it of like, hey, we really mean business this time. And the RIAA agreed already, this is kind of lost in it, to a generic label before the hearings like really, got into the meat of it. So in a lot of ways, these were seen as a performative act of social control, if you will. A good old fashioned name and shame.
Yep.
Tar 'em and feather 'em, right? So we get going, and the first people to testify are from the PMRC. So we start with Tipper Gore, who's very much the ringleader of all of this. And she says, quote, "We are simply asking that these corporate and artistic rights be exercised with responsibility, with sensitivity, and some measure of self-restraint, especially since the young minds are at stake."
And if you hear that as a person who was maybe a little removed from it, you're thinking that music is still like from the 1950s and how bad could it be? And you get exposed to all of this quite like in the moment, You're not part of the culture. You're not into hair metal. You're not into any of this stuff. So you don't really understand what's going on. It does sound scary. You're like, oh no. And the kid and all these problems with the kids are happening and all this stuff. If this isn't what it was like when I was a kid, we got to stop it. And I get it through that lens, but you've got to dig deeper than that. Or at least I would.
Because at all times, parents, if you're like, do you think that your kids are growing up a little different than you did? And they're like, but yes, I do. Things aren't the way they used to be. You're like, and do you know why? So this works. It works over and over again. You see a lot of it. So Tipper gets up and she argues, her whole bit that I mentioned earlier about rising teen pregnancy, rising cases of rape, youth suicide rates, etc. And basically argues that, this music put the moral development of children at risk and led to advanced, criminality and sort of illicit or unwanted behaviors later on. This concludes her testimony. Susan Baker comes up and takes the stand. She says, quote, our primary purpose is to educate and inform parents, as well as to ask the industry to exercise self-restraint. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, right? They're always like, all we're really saying is we just want the parents to be able to make an informed decision. And that's,
that's reasonable. Yeah.
They're like, and also for this industry to restrain itself, and you're like, and what does that mean? How? Right? Like, those are terms that are easy to kind of throw around and be like, we're just asking for a little restraint. And you're like, but how do you govern that? How do you control that? How do you say what is or isn't okay? Right? This isn't a household. It's an industry with a lot of people in it. You have to codify what works and doesn't work. And that starts to look quite a bit like censorship, even if it feels like restraint to you.
Yeah. They're asking for self-restraint from a rather large group of people that are absolutely known for not even wanting a 9-to-5 job, let alone showing a whole lot of restraint in what they're creating. It's a big ask. And I know it probably doesn't feel like it, but it is.
And so she says, and I have this quote too, voluntary labeling is not censorship. Censorship implies restricting access or suppressing content. This proposal does neither. Well,
it doesn't.
It does restrict access.
It does restrict access because,
and it does suppress content. You're objectively asking television stations to not air certain things.
That's true.
You're keeping things behind the counter.
I was about to say, no, you're right. I was about to say, well, it doesn't actually impact the content, but it does in that case. Because I was thinking, a CD, you can still make the CD. You just have to put this label on it. But they were actively asking MTV to not play certain things, and that is censorship.
Right. And granted, I mean, we're not Soviet Russia here. We're not talking about throwing people in jail for making this stuff. You're able to do it. We're just kind of they're talking about throttling the distribution in some way of it. So, it rides a fine line. But in America, where First Amendment rights are sacrosanct, we get pretty touchy about that. And that
rightfully so
is exactly what happens. So and this is the best part. This is the best part of this whole story. That's why I want to talk about it. We have some other people to testify. With the PMRC testimony done, we bring out a couple of musicians that are going to testify from the other side, from their perspectives. And I love the people that came. Do you know who they are? Don't name them if you do. But do you know?
I do
already?
know them. So yeah.
Fantastic.
We touched on this off the air a few weeks ago. There was one surprise one to me, but I knew the rest of them. So I'll let you take it.
So the first one is Frank Zappa, who is seen by a lot of these sort of stodgy, older conservative people as this drug-addled madman of rock and roll. But of course, Frank Zappa is sober. Frank Zappa is just a little crazy in a good way.
Rather famously sober from, we talked about this on the Charles Manson episode. Did he ever try anything at any point in his life? Probably, but he's been rather outspoken about his sobriety. And so it is funny that he made this. I think he just had he didn't need acid. His brain was making enough DMT as it was.
It's some Salvador Dali stuff there, right?
Yep.
And they also, I don't think quite understood how smart Frank Zappa is, who's a very, very astute dude. So
I was going to mention, I wouldn't want to argue with him.
No.
I feel like even if he did, he could make you believe something. He's a very clever man with his words. I'm not saying that he's manipulative. I'm saying he's very smart and very well thought out when he speaks. And
he comes with some prepared remarks, which I'm going to let him do this. So, quote, The PMRC proposal is an ill-conceived piece of nonsense which fails to deliver any real benefits to children, infringes the civil liberties of people who are not children, and promises to keep the courts busy for years dealing with the interpretational and enforcemental problems inherent to the proposal's design. Another quote, bad facts make bad law, and people who write bad laws are, in my opinion, more dangerous than songwriters. Love it.
Yeah.
Great. Give it to him, Frank. He talks about how their demands are equivalent to, quote, treating dandruff by decapitation, which is great.
Gnarly.
Also, he criticizes the PMRC's actions as driven by personal taste and lamented low priority this administration has placed on education for the arts. So he's turning it all a little bit back on them. He responded famously to Senator Paula Hawkins about age-rated toys. In a way, I do because that means that somebody in an office someplace is making a decision about how smart my child is.
Wow. I mean, he's not wrong.
Is she saying,
really
would it be wrong to say this toy can only be used by people under, a certain age? And that's what he's saying, sorry. I don't think it should be your job.
Yeah,
so Frank,
that's my job.
Scorches all these people, basically. Just comes in, lines them up and knocks them down. And no one's expecting this rock and roller to come in and be super educated. This is a common theme. Musicians, especially rock and rollers, being people not expecting them to be smart.
Yep. Well, sometimes, and Frank's not really this way, but sometimes they don't portray that image. So they're trying to be like, yeah, I'm a party guy. Like, do you look at Twisted Sister and be like, what a genius? But actually, Dee Snider is very smart. So yeah, I kind of like it when the rock and rollers take people by surprise.
I do too. I was looking for a specific tweet, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it, quickly enough. Yes, Tom Morello, who of course went to Harvard and is quite well. I'll let the tweet happen. So Tom was talking about politics, and some guy on Twitter, this is a few years back, said, another successful musician instantly becomes a political expert. And Tom says, one does not have to be an honors grad in political science from Harvard University to recognize the unethical and inhumane nature of this administration. But, well, I happen to be an honors grad in political science from Harvard University, so I can confirm that for you.
I remember when that came out. That was like a 2016-ish tweet, I think, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah. This is definitely like Trump administration era, maybe 2017. But yeah, that was a good one because, everyone's like, stay in your lane, play your music. Because, that's what being an adult is. You can only pick one thing.
Well, and
that's all you can talk about.
You don't get to talk about anything but what you know.
That's it. Yeah. That. Tell me the one thing you know, and that's it. Stay in your lane.
Yeah. You know how many framers I've talked to that could fix the entire political discourse overnight? They're not ones to stay in their lane. You got to listen to the framers.
Yeah, the person who's a framer telling you to stay in your lane so that he can keep talking about it.
Yeah, I think what people need to realize is that musicians included, there are a lot of smart people doing a lot of different things. And just because someone is doing a job that you don't perceive as having high intelligence doesn't mean that they might not have a very good opinion on something. And you should just kind of hear it out. And that is the basis of the First Amendment.
That's what we're doing here, folks. That's the idea. So, all right, moving on. So the next one up is, we mentioned him earlier, Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. And you may know what Dee Snider looks like now, but if you don't know, look up Dee Snider in the mid-'80s, because this is kind of how everyone saw him at the time. And he has kind of that drag queen aesthetic with the blonde curly hair and all the face makeup and all these kind of ridiculous costumes and all that. This guy's called up. And in a lot of ways, I imagine any senator who sees a photo and is like, who's talking, is like, oh my gosh, this is going to be easy, right?
Yep, of course.
But yet again, Dee Snider's a pretty smart dude, even if you might not guess it from the way he was dressing in the mid-1980s. So he specifically zeroes in on Under the Blade, this one that Tipper and co. Had said was about bondage and sadomasochism and all this. But in fact, Dee testifies this song was written about a throat surgery that he had done, and is quite literally just about that. Basically, these women heard it and were like, they're talking about tying someone down and cutting into their throat. And he's like, no, It's just about having surgery. And he said, quote, as the creator of Under the Blade, I can say categorically that the only sadomasochism, bondage, and rape in this song is in the mind of Mrs. Gore.
Oh, burn. Basically, that's kind of like, it's kind of that version of like, thou doth protest too much. You know, somebody's thinking about some stuff. They're projecting. And that was definitely going on here for sure.
Yep. And that's kind of the highlight of his testimony. But overall, walks in, does a great job, super astute, comes off as super smart, says, quote, there is no authority who has the right or the necessary insight to make these judgments. Not myself, not the federal government, not some recording industry committee, not the PTA, not the RIAA, and certainly not the PMRC.
Yeah. Get him, D. I love it.
If it's not obvious by now, Blake and I share a kind of one-sided view on this. So we have somebody else out there who's like, no, they should have stopped it.
It's almost like we work in the music industry and maybe have some views.
Yeah.
We
but
do.
That's not all, because the opposition has an ace up its sleeve. They start with Zappa, they start with Dee Snider, but they got something even better.
This
because
is the
you
one
can
that threw me off for sure. I don't think I've ever seen clips of this one. I've seen clips of the other two.
It's good.
I'm gonna have to look this up.
It's less like he's not going up there to own him because of who he is. But they could have found 7 million hair metal dudes that would be happy to go up there and talk about, just grill him. But they're a little smarter than that. So who they trot out instead is the one, the only John Denver.
Yeah. Country Roads, Take Me Home.
That's right. One of the most revered and beloved people in the country, or certainly the musicians in the country. And most centrally, I think the kind of person that the people that were governing the hearing were like, wait, no, I like that guy. Why is he talking on the other side?
Yeah. And also, I don't think a single John Denver track would have ever made their list.
Well, we'll get to that. So John gets up and he says, quote, I'm strongly opposed to censorship of any kind in our society or anywhere else in the world. Another quote, that which is denied becomes that which is most desired. Oh, smart. John.
Another one hitting the nail on the head.
Finishing the quote, and that which is hidden becomes that which is most interesting. He compared the PMRC proposals to the Nazi book burnings, and he talked about how his song Rocky Mountain High was misinterpreted in some cases as being a drug-related song about getting blitzed up in the Rocky Mountains and not the altitude or feelings of happiness upon seeing the majesty of the mountains.
Be right back. I'm going to book a trip to the Rocky Mountains. No real reason. Don't look for me there.
For no reason at all.
Yes.
So John's really the one that, him going up there and being like, I'm against censorship in all forms, no matter what. When you have this guy defending Darling Nikki or defending, I don't want to say the title again because I don't know how many F-bombs I'm afforded on this particular clean broadcast.
I think it's a PG-13
song that we mentioned earlier. Hearing John Denver being like, he would never make that song and would never let his child listen to that song or cover it or anything, but saying, above all, I don't believe in censorship here or anywhere. And really, really does he get it right of the that which is hidden, becomes that which is most desired.
Yeah, 100%. And we've already talked about this even before we got to this point. That's 100% what happened.
It totally is. So in many ways, they were never going to legislate this. This hearing, like I said, was just a good old fashioned name and shame that they wanted to trot these guys out and, let the senators have their way with them and talk about these horrible things they're doing in the music. And in fact, it very much backfires. They very much looked like idiots.
Yes.
When all these guys came out, especially when John Denver's there, telling you that you're being a communist.
And you wouldn't want to be that, would you?
Yeah. If you want to know how to upset a Reagan era conservative, have John Denver call them a communist. That's right. The way you do it.
You can basically get anything you want at that point.
That's right. My father, who would align politically that way, and is a huge John Denver fan, and John Denver man. If I don't even know what he would do if John Denver called him communist. Not that John Denver called these people communists, but he effectively did.
Yeah. He insinuated that in some way, by doing what they were doing, they were an enemy of America.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, moving past the hearing, this all happens. It's big, hot button news. There's no legislation that happens exactly, but just shortly thereafter, on November 1st, 1985, the RIAA agreed to implement the Parental Advisory labels on select releases at their own discretion. So they're not saying, there's some framework, but we'll put it on some of them. And, they committed to this black and white sticker that said explicit lyrics, parental advisory. We have all seen this, right?
Yeah.
As a part of this little truce, the PMRC agreed to refrain from public attacks for a year.
Only a year. That's all you get.
So let them work on it. And these are fairly generic labels, just like the PMRC proposed. This is a very swift agreement. It was a bit of a strategic move because they did, like I said, after there was a Senate hearing, they're like, oh, shoot, we don't want to have some sort of governmental regulation. We'll agree to put something on at our own discretion based on our own kind of, moral judgments here, and not be forced into some specific thing. So it was formally introduced several years later. This is like 1985 when they agreed to it. I believe it was formally introduced in 1990. It was designed by Deborah Norcross, a graphic designer at Warner Brothers Records. She aimed for the strongest read she could get out of the smallest space and chose the black and white for universal applicability. It was rephrased to the Parental Advisory explicit content in 1996. It had prior to that said Parental Advisory explicit lyrics. I guess you can have other stuff in music that could be explicit other than lyrics. I'm not entirely sure what, but I guess
we've talked about some of the stuff I put on my my solo record a few years ago, and that might fall under that category slightly, depending on your view of it. Okay,
the mind reels.
You'll remember the astronaut thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash that again. But I was just trying to think of an example of like content that's not really
that's fair
lyrics. Yeah,
that's fair.
Because all four people that have listened to that will know exactly what I'm talking about.
And you're out there. You're all listening to this too.
That's right.
So by about 2 years later, May 1992, about 225 records had been marked. So not necessarily like the widest spread thing early on, right? There's a lot of albums that come out every year. So that's not a whole ton. But it kind of continues for a while. You and I experienced it. It wasn't like a flash in the pan. It was around by the late 90s and 2000s. It was printed permanently. So as long as there's sometimes there was a sticker, and I wonder why. I don't know why that is. I don't know if they discovered it later and had to apply it. But as long as it's on there, it'll always be on there.
Yeah, so, and those are the ones that made me buy it. Take the sleeve out, fold the page over to a different page, and then that became the new cover.
Oh, that's a good technique.
Yes,
that's a good technique. My technique was to get my neighbor to burn CDs of these things and then write a different, write Simon and Garfunkel on the front.
John Denver.
Right. Yeah. It's all John Denver. John Denver is like a beloved character in my home.
I like that.
So that would have worked, but that would have been too close because my parents might've been like, I do want to listen to John Denver. Be like, oh my gosh, this is Eminem.
I don't know what this is, but that young man is angry.
So after we have these labels out, out into the world in the 90s, many major retailers, Walmart, Kmart, JCPenney, Sears, refused to stock albums with the sticker. And this is kind of, in my opinion, I think like the largest effect that it had was literally just getting these off the shelves in some of the major places that people were buying music at the time.
Very major. Yes.
Some stores limited sales of labeled albums to adults. I feel like I experienced this, where I feel like I have a memory of you having to be 18 to buy one of those, but I could be wrong.
I think because it was like voluntary. I think it was just kind of left up to the store, and then therefore the employee, because there was definitely people I could buy CDs from and people I couldn't, and I knew who they were.
I had that. I was buying a Rage Against the Machine live album. And it, of course, had the Parental Advisory logo. And like, it just kind of went through and scanned. And then we must have been at like Walmart or Sam's Club or something. The like cashier was like, sir, like to my dad who was there, was like, do you know, is this for you or for him?
And you were like, oh.
Yeah. So he was morally policing. No, my dad is a badass. So he was like, yeah, it's for me. And then it was like, don't you let your mother ever see that. And he was like, also, I think in a moment of like, all right, I should maybe like pay attention. He's like, let's put it on the truck. So we put it on the truck on the way home, and it got about like a song in, and he was like, nope. And he's like, he handed it back to me. Like, he wasn't like taking it away. He was just like, I don't want to listen to that anymore. I hate that music. You can listen to it, but I don't want to hear it again.
I had a similar experience. My dad, you know, I was going to a lot of punk shows and stuff, and I was pretty young. I don't even think I was driving yet. And he was like, listen, I see some clips of what goes on at these shows, and I'm not really sure. Very valid concern, by the way. Like, people are going pretty crazy in there, self included. And I was like, well, listen, Dad, if you want to come to a show with me and then decide if I can go to any more shows, I think you'll be surprised at how friendly it actually is. It just looks chaotic. And he was like, no, but be careful when you go to them. Basically was the conclusion but I was like, come on down, Dad. And it's funny when the line, you know, and I say this as a parent too, I could very much see this happening to me at some point. I'm like, I don't know about that. And they're like, well, you can listen to this hyperpop record if you want. And I'm like, I sure don't want to do that.
I don't want to. Yeah. Yeah. To be clear, it wasn't that my dad was like offended by the content. He just hated the music.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to sit through 45 minutes of this nonsense.
Yeah. He wouldn't have preferred to listen to like rap about, you know, God or something at all. Not one bit. Just didn't like it.
Yeah.
So the labels also, and this wasn't like spelled out by the PMRC as far as I know, but they ended up producing like clean and edited versions, mostly as a response to Walmart and places like this not being willing to stock it, because these are important sales that you need for big artists. And you're walking this tough line as a label where it's like, of course, you want to let your artists do whatever they want to do, or like you want to do that as much as you can, because that's really your whole job. But you got to make sure that thing sells, because the artists are also asking you for a massive guarantee. So you want to sell as much of it as you possibly can. So you end up with this. And that's where, like, I remember so many songs in the 90s that would have, you know, just like these silence bits. There was the beeps for a minute, and then it was silence. And they started using sound effects. And that's when it was kind of the funniest. And you'd always have like the sound of you like sheathing a sword and stuff like this that were just replacing words.
Booms and like, yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, I don't know if they still do that. I get the sense that they just re-record the lyrics, and it's weird. Like I remember the WAP edit.
The censored version is so much worse than the real version.
Yes. Wet, my wet and gushy.
It's terrible.
It's
like
weird.
It's like, no, you just made this so much more inappropriate for everyone involved.
I do remember the alternate version of Shaggy's "It Wasn't Me."
No, I didn't know there was an alternate version. I know the original. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm shooting from the hip here, but I think I have it. So in the original, he says, you know, at one point, picture this: we were both buck naked, banging on the bathroom floor. And in the edited version, they re-recorded it to picture this: we were both in aprons, cleaning up the bathroom floor.
I prefer the second one now. It's kind of
really
fun. Yeah,
I think I like the first one.
It's so stupid. That's why I like it.
The second's strange. You wonder what happened to the bathroom floor in the first place.
Yeah, you got to have aprons. It's a big deal. To me, that just sounds like a scene from Breaking Bad where they are just fully dressed up and they were cooking meth or something.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. So, you know, the other obvious effect, as we've been alluding to this whole time, is there's very much a forbidden fruit effect. Label often boosted sales and increased the allure of the albums that it kind of went on to. A lot of people, and this I couldn't find data to substantiate it, but it's like a broad opinion of a lot of people at the time that it made it easier for young people to find explicit stuff, like the stuff that you didn't want them to have. Now they know exactly where it is, and all that. So very mixed reviews on that. Very notably, in hip hop specifically, it became a badge of honor. And
Yes.
in a lot of ways, some of the early hip hop, or like once gangster rap took hold, and then you have everything after that, you'd be kind of ashamed to have an album that doesn't have that.
Yeah, you're like, what are you even doing?
Yeah,
It doesn't fit the genre even to not have that label. It's weird.
right. It was seen as this. If you have this label, you're making an album that has a high degree of authenticity to the lived experience that it's trying to project.
Mhm.
So it becomes very a very proud thing. Obviously, NWA makes some very public use of it in a lot of ways.
I'm sure this would be a difficult thing to calculate, but I know, myself included and lots of other people, they would receive the clean version as a gift from their parents or from somebody as a birthday present or something, which would then cause them to go like, I actually really like this record, but I want to hear the real version, and then go buy the real version. So I wonder how many double sales this contributed to as well. I bet
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have like Public Enemy, Fear of Black Planet, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, of course, NWA, Straight Outta Compton, Ice Cube's, America's with 3 Ks, Most Wanted. All these records have it. All these records sell very, very well.
Yeah, The Chronic did pretty good.
It did real good. It did so good they made another.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man, that's well. If it isn't the consequences of our own actions.
Mm-hmm. I found some. I couldn't find like a real source of where this was, but I like it anyway. But I found some reports that there were artists that even requested the label that had not made explicit albums because of the commercial appeal of the label.
I was going to add a couple of things to this too, because there were albums that came out around this time, and I'm remembering 2 specifically, and I may be a little bit wrong on this, but this is my memory of it. Lit's big album and Unearth's Oncoming Storm both did not have labels on them, and both by the definition of how they've kind of laid out these and the other records.
I thought that Lit one did. I remember the Lit one you're talking about with My Own Worst Enemy on it.
Did it have it on there? Am I mixing that up?
I can't say for sure because my neighbor burned me a copy of it, and I labeled that as Audio Adrenaline or something, a Christian band. But so I only like saw the image like when he was like loading it into his CD burner on his desktop.
Well, the reason I say that is because I know for a fact I got that one as a gift from my parents for Christmas, and they wouldn't have bought me something with that label on it without them like thoroughly listening to it. And I know they didn't thoroughly listen to that record.
Yeah, no. I remember my sister requested, she wanted Will Smith's Big Willie Style, which if I recall, he says damn in one song.
Maybe.
And that's like the extent of it. But my sister was like too good. So she like told my parents, like, I really want this album. There's only one curse word on it. He says damn once. And they were like, no. And she was like, no. And she very much, because it didn't have the parental advisory sticker. It was Will Smith.
No.
She could have said none of that and it would have been fine. But she had to tell him exactly what to look for.
Will Smith don't gonna cuss in his rap to sell records.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
Love that bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of songs are cut also in response to the PMRC. You have Anthrax Starting Up a Posse, the Ramones Censorship, Ice-T's Freedom of Speech, and this goes on for a long time. Eminem's talking about it even in White America in 2002. Also, Frank Zappa's Porn Wars, a bit of an audio collage that was made on Frank Zappa Meets the Mothers of Prevention.
Okay. That's great.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So, the legacy of all this, as you and I have already probably kind of touched on, generally this is seen as having offered somewhat minimal value. It was a big performative, societal thing. You had a nice, good old-fashioned moral panic. And a lot of people felt empowered and felt like they were able to remake society and turn it into something that wouldn't be as lascivious. It wouldn't be as explicit as it was before. But as all of us that are alive now know, in the 40 years since this has happened, nothing has changed as far as that goes. In fact, it's probably only more explicit. It hasn't mattered a bit.
It hasn't mattered a bit. And I was thinking about what if in a bizarro world, this got implemented in a way that was legally required. Okay. One of the beautiful things about music right now, it's also a problem, but it's also a good thing for smaller artists, especially. You don't got to ask anybody to put out a record. You just put it out. You can put it on YouTube. You can upload it through DistroKid or whatever, and just put it out there. And you don't have to ask anybody's permission. What if every independent release had to go through the PMRC and get decided how, like, they literally could not do it now. It would not be physically possible to police the amount of music that is coming out now. I can't remember how many uploads a day there are. It's in the millions. It's insane.
No, I mean, this is literally like what's happening right now with content on social media, music aside, even. There's too much of it. There's way too much of it. We can't even assess whether it's real or not. This is like a huge future forward problem that we're all facing now, is much less censoring, just deciding what's an actual real video of somebody doing something.
That's a totally different topic, but it is astonishing even to me, who's been paying attention to this a little bit closer than your average person, how far AI has come. You can still tell for the most part, but I can very much see the future where you're not going to be able to.
Oh, big time. It's and it depends. There's some stuff that you wouldn't be able to tell even now. Yeah. It's an interesting and new day, and that'll be in its own episode, I'm sure, at some point. That will be performed by AI Scott and AI Blake, of course, assessing the AI future. But
yes,
with all this, it's such an interesting, legacy. I think, I saw a lot of the same kind of attitude come up with video game censorship as we got into the later 90s and the 2000s. And I think that was kind of the general same thing. I think the ultimate thing is that, like, when people are complaining about explicitness, to those people, it's almost always, it's so black and white to them. It's so obvious this is explicit and not okay, and this is not, like, this is okay. But those things are very fluid and, culturally defined, and they change. Things that it would be considered deeply explicit at one point aren't at a different time. And so I think that this always comes up where there's somebody that just wants to just cut it out. Tell them they can't do it. And you're like, well, what can't they do? You have to codify and define that stuff. And that's really tricky work. Yeah. And you're having, what's the cultural makeup of the people that are making those decisions? And are they informing a lot of what they're coming up with, what is or isn't okay based on that? Are they misunderstanding? Are they doing what Tipper was doing with Under the Blade, with the Twisted Sister song, and just reading in stuff in places where it isn't.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about music, is that you're allowed to do that as somebody who's listening to it. And maybe it means more for it to have those themes to you. And so that's what you are creating in your mind. And that's also fine. That's part of the experience of listening to music, is wondering what the artist meant sometimes. Sometimes it's very on the nose. Sometimes it's up for interpretation. And I think that if you start stifling that, that's a big problem.
Yep. I very much agree. And we've not seen the last Satanic Panic. I think we're in some moral panics even right now. I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween growing up for a while. Which is now my favorite holiday, because that's how that works, people. That's how it works every time. But I had to sit inside while the rest of my class were at Halloween parades for like a couple years, and then my mom gave up. But I had it lucky because my sister, she was in 8th grade or 9th grade at the time, and she was allowed to dress up for Halloween because they made her a costume of the biblical Ruth.
Okay.
That she had to go to a very much secular school where everyone's dressed up as, Men in Black or something. And she's like, right. I am the biblical Ruth.
Oh, okay. That's one way to do it. Yeah, you did.
It is one way to do it.
You had it easier.
Yeah, it was easier to not be involved in so many ways. But yeah, it doesn't do anything. It's just a big thing everyone gets, all aflutter about at a given time. And then it is what it is. Now, if you want to talk about society creeping into where these things are more normal and it's what people want and it becomes a big thing, that's kind of its own thing. But you're not going to be able to stave that. I mean, it's the same thing as the war on drugs or anything else. It's when there's demand, it's difficult to fix it by restricting supply.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because while they didn't really, like, Tipper and co didn't know about a lot of this stuff, but if they would have taken a couple steps downward in genre popularity, they would have got into some things where they're like, I don't even know, like, we're worried about all these songs. There's all this underground stuff that's so much more attacking the government, attacking like society.
They didn't know Minor Threat existed at the time.
Right. And I'm sitting there going like, you're worried about Twisted Sister? Yeah. What about Black Flag?
That was only corrupting the minds of a few of America's youth. Not all of them.
Yeah. It definitely hasn't grown into a massive thing where millions of people are interested in it.
And again,
yeah.
I wanted to call back to your point earlier about soccer moms listening to NWA.
Mm-hmm.
Any music that any generation grew up with, by the time their parents, that seems to be okay. It's the new stuff that's bad. And for a while, this was like, it's one thing when you're like, oh, well, Ricky Nelson's fine, but Two Live Crew's not. That feels like a fair division. But these days, that's not. I mean, you have the people that grew up during this, and I guess that's you in some ways as a parent, that are now passing that same judgment. But do you feel like there's music that you probably would intuitively be like, oh, you got to know this song. This song's great. This is this Disturbed song or something that you'd be like, no, you shouldn't listen to that.
Like for instance, I mean, my kids, their favorite band is Metallica. They are 6 and 9 currently. And so I immediately was like, you think they found that on their own? No, I was like, listen to this. This is sick. And so they're like, you ask them both, they'll tell you my favorite song is of Wolf and Man. Like, whose favorite song is of Wolf and Man at this age? Oh,
they're reading it deep. Yeah.
Yeah. They love it. So, but yes, at the same time, there's definitely like, I don't just let them go free range with Metallica's discography. I'm like, well, listen to this one and this one and this one, because you're ready for that. And when you're ready for other stuff, we'll go there. But I've tried to expose my kids to more extreme music because I'm into more extreme music. So when they hear Knocked Loose, they're not surprised. They're not fazed at all. They're like, that sounds cool. I like it. This is great. And so they're in school. It's funny because Rocky doesn't like his music class in school because he doesn't like any of the music. He's like, I don't want to listen to all this nonsense. I want to listen to metal. Like, he genuinely wants to listen to metal. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen in this music class just yet.
No, but it'll come up.
Yeah.
And, as we always talk about, all metal musicians I know like something else more. They're like, I mostly listen to jazz.
Yeah,
I just play metal. What I imagine would be a real challenge is just remembering what's okay and what isn't, because things get normalized in your own brain. There's a lot of like moments where I would wear my Bad Brains like t-shirt to like something somewhere that would be like photographed and stuff. And I do like kind of forget that there's like a lightning bolt like striking the Capitol, because to me that's just the Bad Brains cover. There's nothing weird about that.
Yeah.
But lyrically, I can only imagine there'd be songs where I'm like, I love this song. You got to hear this. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look no further than our recommendation to view The Room at the beginning. I can't tell you how many people I told I was going to go see that movie, and I forgot how graphic the movie is, even though I've seen it 3 times. I was like, oh, this is mostly just stuff that would have a parental advisory label slapped on it, and the funny parts are in between. And so I was like, well, I wish I wouldn't have told my mom that that's the movie we were going to see, but she'll probably never see it.
Yeah, I've been through that a few times. been through some awkward, movies with the in-laws or the parents.
It's hard to remember. I remember as a kid, we would sit down to watch something for family movie night, and then once in a while, it'd be like, whoa, Dad, what are we watching? Yeah, and he's like, oh, forgot about that part. And I'm like, in my brain as a teenager, I'm like, how do you forget about that part? Like,
yep.
And now I'm like, nope, I totally see how he forgot about that part. I understand now.
And we're Americans, so like 100% of the parts that we're talking about are anything sexual. Things with like graphic violence are generally like, well, that's fine for the whole family. That's not objectionable at all.
Oh yeah, I watched Saw 1 with the whole family for family movie night. It was fine.
We're a weird people.
It's totally fine.
But it's how we feel, and I do feel it as well.
Yeah.
So
it's odd.
Well, this is definitely the most, I guess political we've gotten. I hope it strayed, mostly about the music, but I think it's really cool talking about how this musical story interlaces with politics and questions of morality and the broader culture at the time. I think it's all super fascinating to me. So hopefully it is to you and all 12 people that are listening to this at this point in the episode.
Yeah. Well, and I just gotta want to say, like, I do understand why this happened. I get it. I understand that
Me
they
too.
were trying to, and I don't even think it was necessarily nefarious.
Mm-hmm.
It was coming from a place of genuine shock and like, oh, what should we do about this? I just think it was poorly thought out. And again, not really looking what happens historically with all this stuff. And hopefully we can look at this for any future things. I genuinely think this. I think we have pretty good rating systems in place for stuff now.
Yeah.
It used to be sometimes you'd run a PG-13 and you'd be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Oh, or PG. Airplane's PG.
Airplane's PG. I have a friend who watched that with his whole family. And
I watched that with my whole family.
Yeah.
And all the Naked Gun movies, we loved them.
Yeah, well, they're great movies. I love them too. But now we kind of know. I think that is a good thing. People can still largely make whatever content we want. And as far as like movies, games, all that stuff, you kind of have an idea of where the lines are, generally speaking. So that's a good thing. That's like one good result of all this. But anytime you try to start like clamping down on artists, they're going to push back. And the kids are going to want to hear what the pushback's all about.
They are. Yeah. And that's the real thing. I'm with you. I'm not a parent, but I understand why you'd want to have a way for people to make these determinations. I think that listening to, experiencing media with your kids can help, I would imagine.
It does. Yeah.
Like you're actually there and it's not like, I'm going to buy this for them, I'm never going to hear it. Well, maybe you experience with it, it together. I think that some of these things are kind of obvious, whether you have a label on it or not, personally.
Yeah, not most of the time, I shouldn't say, but very often.
Not all, but frequently. Frequently, it's kind of clear. So,
yeah.
It can be a bit redundant. And really, I think a lot of this stuff is just performative. And it's both a way to try to take over the culture and turn it back to some mythical time that never existed. But also, more than anything, even if that's what you want, it just doesn't work when you do it this way. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. I know you want it to, but it doesn't. All the kids are going to run out and buy that album.
I don't think it works when you do it anyway. I don't think it works with the kids. I don't think it works with adults either.
Yep.
C, drugs.
Yep.
And that's a topic for a different day.
Well, with that, Blake, I'll let you read us out.
Speaking of drugs, no, I don't know. I don't know how to segue that. I thought I was going to come up with something funny, but I
think this
Frank Zappa.
episode's going to get an explicit content warning.
I think it probably is. I think we better slap that. We put a warning on all of them. Man.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because I don't want to restrict our artistry, Scott. So
I appreciate
yes.
that.
But moving on, this actually, we were all joking aside, the show's been going really, 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 really well. And I want to thank you for all that. And please keep sharing this with people. It takes a lot sometimes to get people to hop on a new podcast because there are so many out there and they're an hour plus long and blah, 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 blah. But the feedback has been really, really great. And I want to keep doing this. This is a highlight of my week. And the more you share, the more you like, the more you comment, the more you subscribe, the more likely we're going to be able to do this forever. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.